Look at your hand right now, whatever shade it is. Look at it. Really look at it. That color is not random. It is not an accident. It is not a coincidence. It is a message, written in your DNA by every single ancestor you have ever had, going back hundreds of thousands of years, before cities, before language, before fire was controlled, all the way back to the very first humans who ever walked this planet. And here is the part that will change how you see yourself forever. Every single one of them had dark skin. Every one, not most. Not the majority. Every human being who ever existed before about 300,000 years ago had dark skin. There was no such thing as pale skin anywhere on Earth. Light skin did not exist. The concept hadn't been invented yet, by anyone, anywhere, which means at some point, something happened. Something so powerful, so deeply written into DNA, that it changed the physical appearance of entire populations across multiple continents. Over thousands and thousands of years. What was it? The answer involves a star 93 million miles away that has absolutely no idea you exist, and absolutely no interest in your survival. Let's start with your skin itself, because most people have no idea what skin actually is. You probably think of skin as packaging, the bag your body came in, the thing that holds your organs together while you go about your day. But skin is an organ, your largest organ. And it is doing dozens of jobs simultaneously that you never think about and never thank it for. One of those jobs is the most important one for this story. Protection from UV radiation. UV radiation is the invisible energy the sun fires at Earth constantly, and it is not your friend. UV light breaks chemical bonds. It damages DNA. It causes mutations in your cells, and if those mutations pile up in the wrong places over enough time, they turn into cancer, specifically melanoma, one of the most aggressive and deadly cancers that exists. Now here is where your skin color becomes relevant. The pigment that gives your skin its color is called melanin. And melanin is, in the most literal biological sense, a sunscreen, a natural, built-in, always-on UV filter. The more melanin your skin contains, the darker it appears, and the more effectively it blocks UV radiation from reaching the deeper layers of tissue where your DNA lives. Dark skin is not just a look, it is a shield. This is why in Africa, where every human being on Earth originally came from, sitting directly under some of the most intense UV radiation on the entire planet, evolution selected hard and fast for dark skin. Having more melanin meant your DNA was protected. It meant you were less likely to develop cancer. It meant you lived longer. And most importantly, from evolution's cold, calculating perspective, it meant you survived long enough to have children and pass your genes forward. But melanin wasn't only protecting DNA, it was protecting something else. Something smaller, something invisible, something that, if destroyed at the wrong moment, could end a pregnancy before it had barely begun. That something is called folate. Folate is a form of vitamin B9. It flows through your bloodstream doing essential biological maintenance. And during pregnancy, it is not optional. Folate is critical for the development of the neural tube in embryos. The neural tube is the structure that becomes the brain and spinal cord. Without enough folate in the first few weeks of pregnancy, sometimes before a woman even knows she is pregnant, the neural tube can fail to close properly. The consequences are devastating. Severe developmental abnormalities, miscarriage, loss of life. And here is the problem. UV radiation destroys folate. When UV light penetrates skin and reaches the bloodstream, it breaks down folate molecules. In equatorial Africa, with no clothing, no shelter, no sunscreen, UV exposure was constant, intense, and unavoidable. Women with lighter skin had less melanin, which meant more UV penetrating deeper, which meant more folate being destroyed, which meant higher rates of neural tube defects in their children, which meant fewer surviving. Now there were two completely independent reasons why dark skin was not just useful in Africa. It was essentially mandatory. 1. Melanin protected DNA from UV damage, reduced cancer risk, longer life. 2. Melanin protected folate in pregnant women, more surviving children. 2 separate threats. 1 biological solution. Dark skin in equatorial Africa was not a preference. It was a survival requirement. So if dark skin was this multi-purpose biological superweapon, why did it change? Why did populations that left Africa end up lighter and lighter over thousands of years? The answer is one of the most elegant and brutal trade-offs in all of evolutionary biology. Between 70,000 and 100,000 years ago, groups of humans began leaving Africa, not in one dramatic event, not in a single organized migration, slowly, generationally. A group moves a little further north than their parents did. Their children move a little further still. Over thousands of years, humans spread through the Middle East, into Europe, across Asia, and as they moved north, something fundamental changed. The sun got weaker. Not the sun itself. The sun remained exactly as indifferent and nuclear as always. But at higher latitudes, sunlight hits Earth at a lower angle. It passes through more atmosphere. UV radiation is filtered out. Days grow shorter. Winters grow long and dark. The sky stays overcast for months. In northern Europe, in northern Asia, the UV environment is radically, dramatically different from equatorial Africa, and suddenly, the dark skin that had been perfect in Africa became a problem, not because of cancer. The cancer risk at northern latitudes with weak UV was much lower, not because of folate. Less UV meant less folate destruction. The problem was something else entirely. Something that barely gets mentioned when people talk about skin color: vitamin D. Vitamin D is synthesized in the skin when UV radiation hits a specific compound in your tissue. Your skin is quite literally a solar panel. It uses sunlight as an energy source to manufacture this essential molecule. And vitamin D is not optional. Not even a little. It regulates calcium absorption. Without it, calcium doesn't get properly absorbed no matter how much you consume. Without calcium, bones don't mineralize correctly. In children, severe vitamin D deficiency causes a disease called rickets. Bones soften, legs bow outward, skulls flatten, growth is stunted. In adult women, vitamin D deficiency softens the pelvic bones. And softened, deformed pelvic bones make childbirth extraordinarily dangerous, sometimes impossible. Women with severe vitamin D deficiency had dramatically higher rates of death during labor. And vitamin D doesn't stop there. It impairs immune function. It affects muscle strength. It influences the heart. Some research links chronic deficiency to depression and cognitive decline. When vitamin D runs out, the body starts failing in multiple systems at once. Now picture a dark-skinned person living in Northern Europe 40,000 years ago. Their melanin is brilliant at blocking UV radiation, which was exactly the right tool in Africa. But in the gray, overcast, low-light north, that same melanin is now blocking the very UV they need to make vitamin D. Their skin cannot tell the difference between dangerous UV to block and essential UV to absorb. It just blocks, so they don't make enough vitamin D. Their calcium absorption drops, their bones weaken, their children develop rickets. Women die in childbirth. Dark skin in northern latitudes, in a world with no supplements, no fortified food, no medical care, was a slow death sentence stretched across generations. And evolution, that cold, merciless, endlessly patient force, started selecting against it. Mutations that reduced melanin production began appearing randomly, as mutations always do. But instead of being eliminated, they spread. Because individuals with slightly lighter skin synthesized slightly more vitamin D, had slightly healthier bones, had slightly more surviving children. Generation after generation, slightly lighter. Over thousands of years, the skin tones of northern populations drifted, not because anyone decided this should happen, not because of culture or preference or any social force, because in that specific environment, at that specific latitude, with that specific amount of sunlight, lighter skin kept more people alive. The algorithm had simply reversed its inputs. Here is the part that surprises almost everyone. This change happened much more recently than scientists originally believed. Ancient DNA analysis has completely overturned the old assumption that European populations gradually lightened over hundreds of thousands of years. Early European hunter-gatherers, people who had been living in Europe for tens of thousands of years after leaving Africa, were still significantly dark-skinned. The most famous example is a specimen known as Cheddarman. He lived in what is now Britain approximately 10,000 years ago. Ancient DNA analysis revealed he likely had dark to medium dark skin, dark curly hair, and blue eyes. Dark skin. 10,000 years ago in Britain. The extremely pale skin associated with northwestern Europeans today appears to have spread widely only in roughly the last 6,000 to 8,000 years, and the full 300,000-year history of our species, that is less than the last 3%. So what happened 6,000 to 8,000 years ago that accelerated everything so dramatically? Farming. When humans switched from hunting and gathering to agriculture, their diet changed permanently. Hunter-gatherers ate fatty fish, organ meats, shellfish, foods naturally rich in vitamin D. Farming populations ate mostly cereals, wheat, barley, oats. Their dietary vitamin D didn't just drop, it collapsed. Populations that had been surviving on a combination of sunlight and dietary vitamin D were suddenly almost entirely dependent on whatever their skin could synthesize. And if their skin was still fairly dark, that wasn't enough. The selection pressure for lighter skin intensified overnight, and farming communities were large, dense, connected. A beneficial mutation could spread through thousands of descendants in just a few generations instead of slowly drifting through small isolated bands. Dietary collapse plus population density hit the fast-forward button. Within a few thousand years, skin tones across Europe shifted faster than at any point in the previous 100,000 years. Now here is the final thing. The thing that changes how you see all of this: skin color is not a simple trait. It is controlled by dozens of genes working together, and different populations that independently evolved lighter skin did not use the same genes to do it. East Asians and Europeans both have significantly lighter skin than equatorial Africans, but the genetic variants responsible in East Asians are largely different from the variants responsible in Europeans. They arrived at the same answer through completely different routes, the same adaptive solution, discovered independently, by separate populations, on separate continents. When evolution keeps reinventing something from scratch, That is the strongest signal biology can give you. The thing in question really matters for survival. Every shade of skin that exists on Earth today came from the same original population, standing in the African sun, slowly spreading across an unpredictable planet, carrying written in their melanin the precise record of every environment their descendants would ever pass through. Your skin color is not who you are. It is where your ancestors have been. It is a letter written in biology, addressed to the sun,